morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're going to give it just a few more seconds as people keep trickling in. Okay, it's 10:02. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So I am going to go ahead and get us started. Good morning. I am Rachel Eichler with the County of San Diego. I am a group program manager here. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Just for your awareness, our training is being recorded and will be available on both the city and county's websites later this week, as well as any resource materials we mentioned during this training. I wanted to take a minute to explain today. We have with us Spanish interpreters who will be graciously and simultaneously translating today's event. At the bottom of your screen, you will see on the ribbon an icon that looks like a globe. Please click that globe, and once you've clicked, you will notice different rooms, one for English and one for Spanish. Everyone should either be in the English room or Spanish room. In a minute, I will hand it over to Yelka or Barbara, who will interpret this for those needed and provide these instructions in Spanish. At this time, please join one of those two rooms, and we will give everyone a minute to do so. Now that everyone had a minute to join one of the two rooms available, in addition to translation, we also have closed caption available for ADA guidance and to meet county policies. As I mentioned earlier, thank you for joining us for our first annual collaborative training. Before I turn it over to the City of San Diego, you will notice at the bottom of the screen on the ribbon a Q&A button as well as a chat button. We ask that you kindly place any questions you may have within either of those features at any time during our presentation, and a member from one of our teams will respond in a timely manner. If at the end of our presentation you have questions, please raise your hand and I will unmute you. And at that point in time, you'll be allowed to speak. This collaborative training has been something we have been organizing for a long time now. The purpose of this training between the City of San Diego and the County of San Diego Labor Standards and Enforcement is to introduce each agency's program, structure, contact information, websites, resources, and laws enforced to your businesses operating in the San Diego region. Our goal is to help educate San Diego employers and businesses of the wage and labor laws enforced by each agency. Today's webinar training will include our lovely guest speaker, Melissa Whitehead from Shaw Law Group, to provide a summary of the California labor law updates that came into effect in 2023. With that, I will now turn the presentation over to Christiana with the City of San Diego.
Thank you, and thank you for that really wonderful introduction. So hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar today. I'll just give a brief introduction before we move into the city's presentation. My name is Christiana Gauger, and I am the City of San Diego's Chief Compliance Officer and Compliance Department Director. It is my very great pleasure to be here with you all today as part of this city-county joint wage and labor training. It's the first, and I'm hoping it's the first of many. Supporting wage compliance is important to both of our agencies, and to underscore the importance of our efforts, I'm very pleased to share with you a video from San Diego Mayor Todd Gloria.
Please bear with me for a second while I enable the sound for you guys.
Welcome to the first collaborative educational outreach between the city and county offices of labor standards and enforcement. Wage theft is a national crisis, and the city of San Diego is tackling wage inequity head-on through education, outreach, and when necessary, enforcement. Low-income, immigrant, service industry, and limited English proficiency workers are the most vulnerable to wage theft. Now more than ever, it's important to combat wage theft at the local level. My administration is dedicated to ensuring city resources are not used to support those who commit wage theft. And that's why we created the Compliance Department and the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement in 2022 to coordinate citywide efforts to improve worker safety and labor standards. Staff at the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement work to ensure that workers on city infrastructure projects are paid the required prevailing wage, and that companies that do business with the city pay a living wage. With our latest budget investing so much money in fixing San Diego's aging infrastructure, we want to make sure local businesses hired to do so much of this work understand labor laws and local compliance requirements. That's why educational opportunities like these are so important. As a city and as a region, we want to empower local businesses to understand local, state, and federal wage and labor regulations. Our city employees are here as a resource for San Diego businesses to achieve compliance and ensure wage equity for all workers.
That's great. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to hear from our mayor. And now a little more information about our office. The city's compliance department was created via ordinance in January 2022 and includes the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement, or OLSE. OLSE is what you'll be learning more about today. This city office is responsible for coordinating citywide efforts to improve labor standards while administering and enforcing the city's minimum wage, which applies to businesses operating within the boundaries of the city, the living wage ordinance, which applies to specific non-professional city service contracts, and city contractor compliance with federal and state prevailing wage laws. In today's webinar, you will be provided with a brief overview of each of the city's OLSE's programs, the laws and ordinances OLSE staff enforce, basic employer requirements for compliance, and available wage compliance resources. Before we get into all of that good stuff, however, I would like to say thank you to both city and county staff who worked to put this webinar together, I really appreciate the partnership that the city has with the county, and we look forward to future collaborations. I would also like to thank you all again for attending today's webinar, and we look forward to being a resource to this community. I am now pleased to introduce my colleague, Erin, who is a key member of OLSC's minimum wage program and who will walk you through the city's wage compliance programs. Thank you.
Thanks, Christiana. My name is Erin Leah Enderlunis, and I'm a program coordinator here at OLSC. The city's minimum wage and earned sick leave ordinance became effective July 11th, 2016, and is enforced by the minimum wage program. Every October 1st, the program announces the city's new minimum wage, which becomes effective the following January 1st. The minimum wage increase is measured by the percentage increase of the Consumer Price Index each August. Program staff conduct outreach to educate businesses, workers, and community groups about employee rights and employer requirements under the ordinance. The program investigates all complaints received and initiates proactive, directed investigations of industries where data shows high rates of violations and where the workforce is unlikely to file complaints. It is important to note that the minimum wage program represents the city and not individual employees and does not provide legal advice. Since its creation, the minimum wage program has recovered over $1.1 million in back wages on behalf of 2,800 San Diego workers. So who's covered under the ordinance? The ordinance applies to any employee who performs at least 2 hours of work within the geographic boundaries of the city and is eligible for minimum wage per California Labor Code and wage orders. This includes minors, salaried non-exempt employees, undocumented workers, part-time, temporary, or seasonal employees, remote workers located within the city, and those who drive through the city for work-related purposes. Please note there are no small business or non-profit exemptions, and the ordinance applies to all employers regardless of the number of employees they have. The ordinance does not apply to certain workers, such as public employees working for federal, state, or county government agencies, or employees who work for federal enclaves, such as military bases. On our webpage, you can utilize the interactive geographic boundaries map to confirm if work location is located within the city. If an address is within the city, it'll be highlighted by a color corresponding with one of the 9 council districts. Businesses located in other cities, such as El Cajon, Chula Vista, Encinitas, and Oceanside, or unincorporated areas of San Diego County, are not covered by the ordinance. Program staff can assist you in determining if the ordinance applies. The ordinance has 5 main requirements for employers. First, eligible employees must receive no less than the city's minimum wage per hour. As of January 1st, 2023, the city's minimum wage is $16.30. This is higher than the state of California's minimum wage of $15.50, which would apply to businesses outside the city's boundaries. Second, employers must provide eligible employees with paid sick leave by one of 2 methods, accrual or front load. The accrual method requires employers to provide 1 hour of sick leave for every 30 hours worked, and any unused accrued sick leave must be carried over to the next benefit year. The front load method requires employers to provide 40 hours of sick leave at the beginning of each benefit year, no carryover of hours required. The use of sick leave may be limited to 40 hours per year. Please note, this is higher than the state's requirement of 24 hours or 3 days of paid sick leave. Employers must allow employees to use sick leave for themselves or for the care of family members, which includes spouses, domestic partners, children, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, siblings, and adopted, foster, or step versions of these relationships. Employers must allow employees to use sick leave hours for the reasons listed in the ordinance, which includes physical or mental illnesses and injuries, professional diagnosis or treatment, which includes doctors and dentist appointments and scheduled surgeries, pregnancy-related reasons, and the use of safe time for self or family members. Safe time is time away from work due to domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking, and can be used to seek medical attention, services from a victim support organization, counseling, relocation, or legal services. Employers may set a minimum increment for the use of sick leave not to exceed 2 hours. Employers are not required to pay out sick leave upon an employee's separation from employment. An employer may request documentation from a healthcare provider for the absence of more than 3 consecutive days. Third, employers must provide the city's current minimum wage and earned sick leave posters at work locations and provide written notice to employees at the time of hire detailing how the employer meets the requirements under the ordinance. The required posters and a template employer notice are available on the program's webpage in English, Spanish, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. Contact the program if you or your staff need any of our notices translated in another language. Fourth, employers must create and maintain documents documenting wages paid and sick leave hours provided. Records must be kept for at least 3 years, and employers must allow the minimum wage program access to records during an investigation. Last, employers are prohibited from engaging in retaliation against employees for exercising their rights under the ordinance. This includes filing a complaint, requesting payment of minimum wage or use of earned sick leave, informing workers of their rights, or participating in an investigation. Retaliation is defined as any adverse employment action and may include threats, discipline, discharge, demotion, suspension, or reduction in work hours. The minimum wage program webpage contains several resources for employers. You can contact the program directly by email or phone for any technical questions. Use the interactive geographic boundaries map to confirm if a work location is within the city. Download the minimum wage and sick leave posters, or review the FAQs and guides for detailed information on commonly asked questions. Sign up for minimum wage program email updates and receive a notification when the new city minimum wage is announced. The webpage also includes a guide to investigations for employers who receive a notice of complaint from our office. Next, we will cover the living wage program. The living wage ordinance was adopted by the City of San Diego in 2005 and requires covered employers to provide specific wage rates and benefits to workers on applicable non-professional city service contracts and agreements. The living wage program is responsible for monitoring and enforcing the ordinance. Program staff conduct ordinance administration, annual wage adjustment reviews, compliance reviews, complaint investigations, and outreach and education internally with city departments and externally with vendors and contractors. The living wage ordinance applies to City of San Diego service contracts, financial assistance agreements, and facility agreements. The ordinance includes over 20 specified services, including automotive repair, cashiers, food prep and concessions, building maintenance, janitorial, landscaping, and security workers, pest control, parking services, and clerical staff. City facilities include Petco Park, Pechanga Arena, San Diego Convention Center, San Diego City Concourse, and Civic Theater. Living wage requirements applies to subleases, subcontractors, concessionaires on service contracts at these city facilities. Nonprofits, businesses with less than 12 employees, sole proprietorships, and businesses with collective bargaining agreements may apply for an exemption of the living wage ordinance subject to program approval. Employers subject to the living wage ordinance must register online with Planet Bids and Prism, pay the required living wage to all eligible employees, provide 80 hours of paid time off and 80 hours of unpaid time off per year, notify employees of their rights under the ordinance, post job posters, report wages to the city and allow access to records, and comply with audits. The Living Wage Program, next slide, please. The Living Wage Program's webpage contains information on the ordinance, annual living wage rates, application for living wage exemption, and other resources for city contractors. The program can be reached directly via phone and email. Staff conducts quarterly web-based trainings providing in-depth details of living wage requirements, certified payroll reporting procedures, and account management information. To register, please contact the Living Wage Program by email at contactlwo@sandiego.gov. Last is our Prevailing Wage Unit. The Prevailing Wage Unit monitors city-awarded projects to ensure compliance with local, state, and federal requirements. Their goal is to ensure that anyone working on a public works project is paid the appropriate prevailing wages. Staff present at pre-construction meetings, conduct site visits and worker interviews, monitor payment of prevailing wages and apprenticeship levels, conduct audits, and investigate labor code violations. As a certified labor compliance program, the city is obligated to enforce applicable labor code provisions and operates as a representative of the California Department of Industrial Relations in conducting investigations. The Prevailing Wage Unit conducts quarterly outreach and trainings with city contractors. These interactive Zoom trainings provide a history of prevailing wage on city projects, review requirements for contractors under state and federal law, discuss required city forms, show attendees how to find the correct wage termination, and demonstrate how to enter certified payroll in the city's reporting system, PRISM. The Prevailing Wage webpage contains additional information and resources for city contractors and those interested in doing business with the city. The Prevailing Wage Unit can be contacted directly via email for any questions regarding prevailing wage compliance on a city project. Before I hand the presentation off to Brandon with the county, I wanted to highlight a few additional resources for San Diego businesses and those interested in contracting with the city. Our Purchasing and Contracting Department webpage contains information on how to register with the city's bid management system, Planet Bids. The system announces and distributes all solicitations for public works and goods and service contracts. Equal Opportunity Contracting provides information on the city's Small Local Business Enterprise, or SLBE program, and how to become certified as a disadvantaged business enterprise. Last, the Economic Development Department has compiled frequently requested services often used by businesses throughout the city, including information on regulations, business districts and networks, and programs available for assistance. Thank you for your time today. Please reach out to our office with any questions you have or to register for a training. And now to Brandon with the county.
Well, thank you, Erin. Really appreciate the partnership with the city of San Diego and the staff. You've done such a wonderful job. And thank you to the mayor. My name is Brandon Butler. I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement. And let me first apologize. I lost my voice yesterday with laryngitis, so I am going to give it the college try, and I appreciate your patience. But let's go ahead and get started first with a warm welcome from Chairwoman Nora Vargas, who heads the Board of Supervisors for the County of San Diego.
I'm Chairwoman Nora Vargas, and I'm proud to serve on the Board of Supervisors for the County of San Diego, the 5th largest county in the United States. San Diego County is currently home to more than 3.1 million residents, and our population is anticipated to grow up to 4 million by 2026. We are a diverse county, and that diversity is truly represented as we look across our region, from being home to more tribal nations than any other county in the United States, to 37% of our residents under the age of 18 being Latino. And that population is expected to continue to grow at a rapid rate. San Diego County has also proven to be a welcoming community, with 21.5% of our population being immigrants, including refugees who come from other countries. They speak 68 different languages and look to our county government for services, resources, and information to fully integrate and contribute to the community. Our county is committed to prioritizing equity, justice, and sustainability, which is why our board adopted a $7.36 billion budget for fiscal year 2022-2023 to ensure we make impactful investments in our communities. With the guidance of our budget equity tool, our budget was shaped by diverse public input to move toward our goal of ensuring everyone, especially those who are most vulnerable, have access to housing, healthcare, and economic opportunities. These investments work towards eliminating long-standing disparities that have affected residents across our region for far too long. It is a budget that supports families and enriches neighborhoods so that people have a vibrant and safe place to live and work. And to ensure we uplift workers and pursue additional enforcement measures to protect them, our Board of Supervisors established the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement on May 4th, 2021, to serve a central location for education and resources to help undertake research and data analysis for employers and for workers. Currently, there are 15,264 businesses located in the unincorporated areas of San Diego County. Of those businesses, 2,800 are located in Fallbrook, 2,400 in Spring Valley, 2,000 in Ramona, 1,900 in Lakeside, and 1,000 in Bonita. The mission of the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement is to advance labor standards throughout our community and business engagement, strategic enforcement, innovation, and study and policy development with a commitment to workplace justice. Our goal is to create and foster a culture of labor standards compliance in San Diego County that protects the safety of our workers and businesses. At the core of unfair and lawful labor practices in the state and county is wage theft. Wage theft is the illegal practice of employers not paying workers for all their work, including violating minimum wage laws, not paying overtime, forcing workers to work off the clock, misclassification, and so much more. Wage theft can sometimes be a criminal act. We currently must mitigate this crisis that our county and state are facing, and it starts with our businesses. The Office of Labor Standards Enforcement here at the county is helping provide you with the resources and training to understand how you can prevent issues within your businesses.
Well, thank you to the Chairwoman, Nora Vargas. And as you heard, we are a very new office. Our goal was really to be the central resource for both workers and employers when it comes to understanding what your obligations are, what your rights are. And today, this training is really the embodiment of one of that primary goals we want to serve, is to be a training resource for you, businesses, our partners. So we were established by the board in 2021, and really the office became staffed up in 2022. So we are a very new office. And when we were created by the board, we had 7 primary functions. And one of our functions is to be the resource for workers and employers, as you've heard about. But that also includes taking questions from businesses, doing outreach for workers, and developing resources for both businesses and workers. We also are dedicated to business and community engagement. We meet regularly with community stakeholders from both businesses and advocacy groups. And we also are committed to working with our Chamber of Commerce throughout the region to promote labor standards education. We also act as the county expert on worker issues. We conduct research, we use data analysis to develop new policies or ideas to propose to the board. We have to give an annual policy recommendation to the board each year that not only includes what we've been doing, but uses the data analysis to provide possible policy recommendations to the board to undertake. We also have been asked by the board to create a workplace justice fund. This concept is the idea of creating a fund to help workers who have prevailed on a labor commissioner wage theft complaint, but have been unable to obtain any financial assistance or the recovery from their award. So that's something we're also studying and researching. We've also been asked by the board to create additional enforcement avenues in the unincorporated area. As you saw from our partners at the City of San Diego, who have a wage ordinance and a sick time policy, the county does not have that at this time, and we are under the state rules in the unincorporated area. But there's study going on and research on additional enforcement avenues. And lastly, we've been asked to coordinate with county departments to really create a new culture of labor standards and to try to find ways to prevent wage theft. Some of those include the fact that the county will look into a business's past wage theft judgments. Oh, someone's going to contract with us. We've created new standards to ensure that the businesses who contract with the county are high road employers who are following the law. Next slide, please. Now, we are a very small office. I am the deputy director, and we also have a administrative secretary, Juliet Weeks, and an externship program with the Cal Western School of Law. And let me again just thank Rachel Eichler and our team for her wonderful job in coordinating this along with the city, with Aaron as well. We also have a group program manager of enforcement, Brian Sperber, an attorney, and we have an investigator, Cynthia Centeno. So a small team, but we are growing. Next slide, please. So, as you heard at the city enforces all of the wage laws within the jurisdiction of the City of San Diego. Our jurisdiction is really the opposite. OLSC, has enforcement jurisdiction as we create new laws in the unincorporated area of the county. And this, as you heard from Chairwoman Nora Vargas, is, generally, you may know Ramona and Julian, Valley Center, Bonita, Lakeside, Alpine. You see in the map the yellow area. But the point being, when you take all of the populations together for the unincorporated area, it equals one of the largest, would equal one of the largest cities in the county if you were to take all those folks together. So while it is a rural environment and spread throughout the county, it's a sizable population. Next slide, please. So, as you've heard from both the mayor and the chairwoman, both of our offices, the city and the county, are really trying to combat this issue of wage theft. And, wage theft is a broad term, but it's the idea of a worker not getting paid the wages that they are owed. And that may be not being paid minimum wage, not receiving overtime, being misclassified, so you're being exempt from overtime pay, and other ideas. But it's really the idea of not being paid wages, whether those be tips, we can go down the line. But this is a concept and a problem throughout our state that when we've developed our office, we've really been looking at how do we structure, knowing that this is the crisis in California. Next slide, please. And so I say it's a large issue because, majority of wage theft claimants, don't even file generally, and only do in the most egregious cases where maybe a worker hasn't been paid at all. So all of the, small time complaints of maybe a few hours, those generally don't get reported and workers move on. We know one of the most common obstacles to filing a wage claim is that many workers do fear retaliation. And there's a lack of information too on what do you do if you're the victim of wage theft. And lastly, we know that pursuing a wage theft claim with the Labor Commissioner's office for both sides, probably for both businesses and employers, can be a frustrating and confusing process. And it's particularly difficult for low-paid workers. Next slide, please. And as we've built this office, we have been conducting research to understand the level of wage theft in San Diego County. And we did a deep dive looking at federal and state data, looking at the amount of judgments that have been unpaid over the last 20 years. So these are folks who have prevailed in a case where a worker was owed money. And when we look at that data for 20 years, we can see that there's a lot of money that has not been paid out to workers and is not in our community. So you have, $14 million in wage theft in the service industry, and 12.6 in construction, healthcare 12.1, in restaurant, and 9.2 million. Now that's 20 years of both federal and state. But when you look at just 5 years of unpaid wage theft judgments, and by that I mean a worker has prevailed on a case with the labor commissioner, they were awarded a certain amount of money from as wages, and they have not been paid by the employer. So that's what I mean by, these unpaid wage theft judgments. So all rights of appeal are gone. These are the, final judgments. And here you see that the construction industry just in the last 5 years is at 1.6 million, in administrative services at 1.4 million, and you go down as well, look at restaurants. So this is just to say that wage theft is an issue in our community and may not be widely known or reported, but the data supports that it is a relevant issue. Next slide, please. And as we've set up our office, we have reached out to other OLSCs throughout the country. We've talked to the Labor Commission. We've been doing a lot of work, but one of the issues that came up in our environmental scan was that for workers who are filing complaints here at the state, there can often be a large delay at the Labor Commissioner's office. And, according to a Cal Matters article, in 2022, on average, it was taking almost 800 days for a filing of a wage claim to go to hearing. And here in San Diego, in 2021, and I think it's likely gotten a little better, it was almost at 500 days. So this is something, as we've developed this office, we have heard from both businesses and workers about, is there another way? Is there another process that could be, help both workers and businesses adjudicate these types of issues? Next slide, please. So with that kind of background and setup, our office does have a few ordinances that we do currently enforce. One of those is the Working Families Ordinance. And this is really an idea that contractors and subcontractors who are performing construction on a county contract over $1 million, or where there's a single trade, apprenticeable occupation of over $25,000, the rules are that the employer must use a skilled and trained workforce, right? Those are folks who have taken apprenticeship. There has to be paid sick leave, in compliance with state law, and there can be no retaliation for making complaints under this ordinance. So this really applies to construction projects with the county. So we do enforce those wage ordinances there. Next slide, please. And I forgot to mention it requires prevailing wage as well. It's a public contract, of course. But interestingly, the Working Families Ordinance also applies to businesses that are leasing county-owned property. You may want to think of like an airport that we own. There are businesses that rent that space. And the rules here are, if one of those businesses is going to do a tenant improvement of the county lease space over $1 million, they must pay prevailing wage, even though they're a private company. They're going to have to pay prevailing wage, use a skilled and trained workforce, and ensure that the workplace conditions are safe and paid sick leave applies. So that's one of our first ordinances that we enforce. Next slide, please. We also enforce the Subcontractor Transparency Ordinance. This requires contractors to disclose information for their subcontractors working on projects that require county building permits. So, it's really about the larger contractors, right, who are building, 5 or more homes or 5 or more units, or doing improvement of over 10,000 square feet of renovation. So our larger folks, but here, the general contractor must now list out who are all these subcontractors, and also disclose whether they're under any investigations or have any wage theft violations. So we enforce this ordinance to ensure that it is accurate. Next slide, please. We also enforce the entertainment worker safety at county facilities. You may have seen the large stages at the waterfront park downtown. We had Gwen Stefani and, Boots in the Park. We've had lots of concerts there, but ensuring the safety of the public is paramount to us at the county. And these stages are very large and can be unsafe, which is why anyone who's putting up the rigging and the staging has to obtain certain certifications from the Entertainment Technician Certification Program and the OSHA 10 program if they're going to be any of the riggers setting up the stage. Next slide, please. And while not yet implemented, one of the programs we'll be working on in 2023 to implement will be the Good Faith Business Owners Program. And the idea here is that we want to ensure that businesses who are playing by the rules, like all the folks here, that they don't have to compete with businesses who are not following the rules, and ensuring that those who have not satisfied wage theft judgments will have to come into compliance. And one of the ways we're going to help achieve that is using the powers we have with the county. One of those is around food permits. And following a program out of Santa Clara County, we are currently researching a program that would require businesses such as restaurants who have unpaid wage theft judgments to come into compliance and set up a payment plan with the state or satisfy the judgment in order to continue maintaining a permit to ensure that we have a fair playing field for all businesses. So stay tuned for that program, but that's one of the goals of the board in setting up this office, is to look at what does the county actually operate and how can we ensure that we're kind of closing ranks on wage theft and making a fair playing field for businesses. Next slide, please. And we also enforce the, what we call a better way, adopting contracting standards for janitorial, landscaping, and security services. So here at the county, we have 16 janitorial contracts. We have 4 landscaping contracts and security contracts that actually total, almost 1,100 employees. And we have a new policy here at the county now that requires a lot of things for these contracts. One being that these contracts will all be part of a RFP, a proposal process, where we look at many factors. It is not a low bid process anymore. We also have created a wage theft retention fund for any of these vendors, where they will keep a fund together to ensure all workers are paid if there's a violation. And there's a minimum wage floor. There's a requirement for training and some worker retention policies. But broadly, we are regulating the labor standards for these disciplines on county contracts. Next slide, please. And a very new ordinance that actually will take effect on March 8th is called the Right of Way Done Right. And it essentially adopts a minimum wage for anybody doing traffic control work in the unincorporated areas. And essentially, if you are a private traffic control worker working on a project in the right of way, whether or not you have a permit, all of those workers, those traffic control workers, will need to be paid prevailing wage. The board directed this ordinance, to ensure that there is a prevailing wage for these types of projects and ensuring that workers receive a fair pay. So this is a new one we'll be enforcing, but it applies to the unincorporated area for folks doing traffic control work only. Next slide, please. Well, with that, I am happy to pass it to Rachel. I made it with my voice. So thank you again. We really appreciate you being here. And I'm going to send it over to Rachel to take you through our other resources that we offer. Thank you again.
Thank you, Brandon. The county's OLSC has taken part in producing content on our multiple social media platforms across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We share upcoming and previous outreach events, like our health clinic we participated in and partnered with the Employee Rights Center on, in which we passed out 54 food packages, 80 frozen turkeys, 24 Medi-Cal applications, 48 youth pass buses or bus passes, and so much more. We also have informative information relating to labor law changes, like the minimum wage ordinances that went into effect on January 1st, and did you know facts, like information relating to the Survivors of Domestic Violence Employment Leave Act. Our social media platforms is just one of the avenues we distribute information to constituents, and we also have our email distribution list as well as our website. The county's Office of Labor Standards Enforcement website serves as a central location for education and resources for employers and workers, undertakes research and data analysis regarding worker issues, and pursues additional enforcement measures to protect both workers and businesses. While we are still a new department and building the website out, we have made great strides to provide as much resource and information as we possibly can, so that it can be used as a guide to support businesses and workers in finding the necessary information they may need. As you can see in the screen grab on the right, the businesses section is robust in providing pertinent information we thought was important for businesses. Under the required worksite posters, you'll find all the mandatory posters you need to be in compliance at your workplace for free, as well as documents if the documents are available in other languages. After extensive community engagement to identify educational resource needs for workers and employers, OSC designed contracts that aim to address and needs identified by community-based stakeholders. The overall goals we specified through both contracts agreed with what community-based stakeholders identified, which was the need for direct engagement outreach, an education campaign that uses trusted messengers, a labor advice line to help workers and small businesses with labor compliance, and case management services to directly help workers with state labor violations. The procurement invited a collaboration of contractors to lead the multilingual direct engagement campaign, to educate workers on their rights and assist businesses with labor standards compliance. With that, a partnership with the Employee Rights Center and the Shaw Law Group was established. Together, both vendors meet the needs identified in the procurement and ultimately benefit both businesses and workers alike. Before I pass it over to Melissa Whitehead with the Shaw Law Group, I want to take a moment and mention, for those who are unfortunately not able to join us, I will have to stop recording at this time due to contractual policies with the Shaw Law Group in the next segment of this presentation. However, I do want to mention we have additional upcoming trainings with the Shaw Law Group that will go over the same information, as well as additional information that will not be covered today that may also be of interest to vendors and businesses. Information relating to upcoming trainings will be available on our website, as well as our social media platforms like I mentioned earlier. But for your awareness, everyone who has emailed me asking a question or seeking to get into this training, I've added to our email distribution list and will send out an email with these next training dates in the coming days. If you are a vendor in the RFP process for the County of San Diego or seeking further information relating to contracting with the county, we have upcoming trainings with the Department of Purchasing and Contracting, which will include a segment from the Shaw Law Group for businesses and vendors in April and again in May. More information relating to this training will be distributed in the days to come. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm also going to stop the recording.